All right, everybody. So I just concluded a podcast interview with a friend of mine, Jason Stauffer. He is the owner and creator of Morozko Forge. And this was a guy that I was fortunate enough to meet at a Wildman experience with one of my best friends, Johnny Alsassery, through this event. And Jason was there, and he was kind of the cold plunge guru. And I'm like, what is this guy? What is he all about? And he completely changed my mind and my perception and the way that I entered the cold environment. And so in this podcast, I'm excited to share this with you. We talk about some of the science behind it. We talk about what makes his units different, better, cleaner than the competition, and really just opens up this beautiful conversation about how he got into it, how his wife was able to cure a quote unquote incurable autoimmune disease. So this is what I wanted to bring to the table. This is the information that I wanted to bring to the table. And Jason and I had a beautiful conversation on this. So strap in, make sure that you have the time to fully immerse yourself in this podcast. I hope you enjoy. All right, man. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the Doc Jacque Show. This has been something that we've been working on for many, many months to try to find a day and a time that worked for two super busy kind of entrepreneurs in this thing. But wanted to just say thanks for coming on the show, and appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, I'm glad that we finally aligned. You know, we met in Texas on that Wildman experience with Johnny, and we most of the time we're in the same city, and so it's been interesting trying to we're 10 miles apart, but everybody's working on everything that they're working on.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, when we were down in Corpus Christi, we were doing that Wildman experience. Before that, like I moved to Arizona because I love the warmth. I love to be warm all the time, and Johnny's like, we're gonna do cold plunges. I'm like, shit, all right. So I was dreading it, man, and then. With obviously the setup and stuff that we have wasn't as fancy as what you've got. We just had some like steel drums. We threw some ice in and some water, but the technique and stuff that you were able to kind of implement and just doing it for 2 days, like 2 sessions in 2 days, I noticed this profound benefit from it. And from there, I was like, yeah, I got to get you on the fucking podcast, man, so we could talk about this. So I wanted to just start by just saying, how did you get into this? How did you get into creating this?
Yeah, the creation myth is an interesting one. And as the project gets longer and longer, I have to pick the arcs because I can't tell the whole story anymore, especially not in like a 1 hour podcast. I could do like a whole 2 hours on it. And so there's basically 2 arcs that converge at the same time. And one of them was I was working as a pharmaceutical business analyst at the time. So I'm a combat veteran. I was in the Army until 2005. I got out of the Army. I bartended for a couple of years before I found my way back to college on the GI Bill. I ended up getting a degree in civil, environmental, and sustainable engineering. I did not go into that field. I ended up finding my post, undergraduate career for 6 years in pharmaceutical business analytics. And so this is what taught me some behind the scenes of the pharmaceutical company, how products are researched, developed, bought, sold, mergers, acquisitions, valued, priced, communicated to providers, communicated to patients, and how the kind of entire prescribing culture of the United States and the greater industrialized world has evolved. And it's easy to vilify the pharmaceutical industry, but I always stop at this point. I say, my experience is it's overwhelmingly full of good people who want to do good things in the world, but it's just this massive giant that has evolved to almost entirely be focused on symptom management. It's all about how can I reduce symptoms? And that reduces suffering. It makes people feel better. And again, this is the best way that a lot of people have figured out of how to help people, because it's really hard to get people to change their lifestyle. You can sit patients down and you can say till you're blue in the face, you should get some sunlight, you should get some exercise, you should think about the foods that you eat, get some cold exposure, get some hot exposure. Most patients, they just want to feel better. And so that's like a demand side problem, where when the patients are demanding symptom management, the supply is going to meet the demand. And that's just the way that the system has evolved. So I was learning about this and I was watching it, and I was watching, part of one job that I had, the final job that I had in the industry, I was working as a consultant with nonprofit hospitals. So I'm working with religious organizations and nonprofit hospitals that are on these very, altruistic, humanitarian missions to reduce suffering in patient populations, but they're still just managing people's symptoms. I'm looking at the patient records, and there's this rubber stamp of like, continue on meds, continue on meds, continue on meds. Very little conversation about what is the root of metabolic chronic illness. And so I've got this macro level understanding. At the same time, my wife, Adrian, she hit her early 30s and her health started turning on her. Very rapid onset symptoms, rapid weight gain, lethargy, pain in her joints, allergic reactions to botanicals, to trees blooming, to foods, all of this that she'd been around her entire life. All of a sudden, her body is just like turning against itself. And she goes into the allopathic Western United States healthcare system, and she goes around, she gets a bunch of tests done. A bunch of doctors say, I don't know, I can't figure this out. And finally, she gets some diagnoses. And one of the diagnoses was Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. It's a very common thyroid diagnosis. When a patient is given this diagnosis, the endocrinologist sits them down and says, we did a bunch of tests, we took your blood, we looked at your blood. I need to tell you that you have a chronic, incurable autoimmune condition. You have a thyroid issue. Now, there's nothing that you did that caused this. There's nothing that you can do to reverse this. You will always have this condition for the rest of your life, but fortunately, you can take synthetic hormones every day, and this will help you manage your symptoms. And that's a paraphrase of the endocrinologist narrative,
Sure.
But it's pretty accurate. It's what patients are sat down and they're given this narrative. And so she ends up on the synthetic hormone. She also ends up with the diagnoses from an allergist called eosinophilic esophagitis. So foods, botanicals, fragrances were causing hives in her esophagus. And so now somebody walks into the office she's working in wearing Axe body spray, and it literally closes her throat, which is an existential nightmare. If you're going around the world and all of a sudden you're going to bump into an old lady wearing Chanel No. 5 or something, and that's going to cause hives in your throat to where you can't breathe. And those hives are going to like burst, and it's just awful. So this is the acute situation. I'm watching my wife go through this, and she's getting on the synthetic hormone. She's now up to 2 live antibody shots a month to help with the allergies. There's side effects to these medications, as there typically is. And so then there's a naturopath who's recommending supplements for the side effects, but these supplements have side effects. And so there's other supplements for the side effects of the supplements, for the side effects of the prescription medications. And I'm just watching this pill bottle grow and grow and grow on the dresser. And all the while, Adrian's not getting better. Like, nothing is getting better. She still feels awful. The environment around her, she's under constant attack from. Whatever physically, physiologically, biologically that's going on. Of course, there's also psychological, emotional, there's stress, there's anxiety, there's existential dread. Of course, if you feel like somebody walks by you with a scent on and that could kill you, like that is just a very, very difficult existence for a person to have. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching it. And so I've got this behind the scenes understanding of how our healthcare system, the allopathic healthcare system, has evolved to be about symptom management. Nobody's really talking about, disease reversal. It's evolved this way. It's many generations into where most of the healthcare providers, they don't even understand that diseases have a reverse. Chronic illness is just, it's a roll of the dice. It's a card that you pull. You've got it. You've always going to have it. There's nothing you can do about it. And I just couldn't accept that. So I started experimenting. I started reading everything that I could. I developed this reading regimen, routine, whatever you want to call it, a reading diet, where I was reading very new nonfiction, things on like stress management, exercise, psychology, meditation, all kinds of the self-help genre. And I was also reading old fiction. And the fiction had to be at least 50 years old or older and still culturally relevant. Like if I can go to Barnes and Noble and I can pick up a novel that was first published at least 50 years ago, this is a litmus test. I borrowed this from Nassim Taleb, who calls that the Lindy effect, where if something is that old and it's still culturally relevant, then there's a reason for that. It's got some sort of resonance to it. So I'm reading like old John Steinbeck novels and old Kurt Vonnegut and Robert Heinlein science fiction books, which sounds really weird, right? Until you find that little nugget in that novel or nuggets in that novel that says something resonant, that is read in over multi-generations because it's kept it in print, it's kept it relevant. And I started to solidify this understanding because, again, a lot of these chronic illnesses, they weren't around 100 years ago. And so we could say they were around and we just didn't know about it. People were dropping dead from hypothyroidism and we just didn't have the word for it. Or there could be something else there. And the hypothesis or the theory or whatever it was that I started solidifying is that in our post-industrial culture and our post-digital revolution culture, our physiology, our biology is so out of alignment with its natural state that we have lost track of the externalities, the side effects of industrial and digital culture. Now, industrial and digital culture, they're genies that came out of a bottle, they're not going back in, and they're not all bad. Like you and I are we're in the same city, separated by 10 miles, but it ended up better for our schedules to just talk through a Zoom call. These are amazing technologies and tools that can be used for amazing things. We're going to broadcast this on the internet, and our message, our voice is going to be heard by people that it wouldn't normally be heard of. But there are costs to this. And in one of the books that I read that was really resonant to me was a book called Technopoly, which was published in the early 90s. And if you read it, it's pretty prophetic because this book was published about the time the internet was turned on. But the author, Neil Postman, who's long since passed, he was a professor, understood that there was a bubbling problem with technology and information. It was going to swell and it was going to swell. It was already swelling to a point where it'd get out of control. And so, we have these technologies. We always ask, what does the technology do that's good for us? What does the technology do that I want it to do? We very, very rarely stop to ask, what is it going to undo? And what's the side effect going to be? And so all of this started bubbling and solidifying. This is like 2016, 2017, getting into 2018. My personal experimentation led me to ketogenic dieting, extended and intermittent fasting. So I'm cutting out carbs, I'm cutting out sugars, I'm sticking it to like meat and vegetables. And I'm experimenting with like, what happens if I don't eat for a day? Okay, what happens if I don't eat for 2 days? And all of a sudden things started clicking and turning on. And it's interesting. This is one of the things that I found in the old books, because fasting used to be very common. Fasting used to not even be our choice. You go back 1,000 years ago, and you're like, maybe I find food today, maybe I don't, it wasn't a given that you were going to eat every single day, much less 3 times a day with snacks in between. But you tell people today, hey, I'm fasting. I go to the office on a Friday and they've brought in, 24 donuts because it's Becky's birthday. And you say, thanks, no, I'm really watching my carbs, my sugar, and actually I'm 2 days fasted right now. And these people look at you like you're starving yourself. They're concerned for you. They're like, you tell your mom that you're I mean, I don't know about your mom. I tell my mom, hey, I'm fasting for the next 3 days. You're going to starve yourself. Like you're really like, you're going to end up in a bad spot. And it's like, this just isn't true. It's a cultural narrative. It's culturally believed, and anything that is believed about from enough people is very powerful. It's interesting that so quickly in the last 150, 200 years, something that was very normal, like fasting and walking to work, you look like you're crazy to people. And this is what led me to experimenting also with environmental exposure, with temperature exposure and volatility, understanding again that no matter if you're in St. Paul, Minnesota, or Phoenix, Arizona, or New York, or Mexico, or Bali, or whatever, we've gained this ability to be a very climate controlled species. I can, whether I'm in Detroit or Los Angeles, if I'm really savvy, I can go from my 75-degree home to my 75-degree car to my 75-degree office and barely touch any sort of temperature volatility throughout my day. And this is one of the things that I also recognize is very new. This is very new in our species. And so I'm like, what can I do to get a little bit back to the way that our species has evolved, developed over the last however many hundreds of thousands, millions of years that our species has evolved? And so I started being intentionally temperature-wise uncomfortable. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. It gets very hot in the summer. I started sleeping on the ground in my backyard on weekends. So I just take a blanket, kiss my wife goodnight. She's going to go in and be comfortable in the bed. I'm like, I'll see you in the morning. I'm going to sleep. And you know, as well as I do, in Phoenix in the summertime, it doesn't drop below 100. Like no. It goes 120, 105, 120 for like, 6 to 8 weeks. And so this is one of the first temperature, environmental exposures. I'm also sleeping on the ground in the grass. I'm surrounded by pollen and insects and things like that. All of these things that our species had to deal with until very, very recently. And this is what led me to my first ice bath. I saw some friends online who started posting they were taking ice baths. They were doing Wim Hof. I started becoming aware of Wim Hof. This is getting into fall of 2017. This is, October of 2017 was my first ice bath. And so I'd been on this long journey of how can I test myself? How can I stress myself? How can I access my own anti-fragility, my own biological response to hormetic stress? And that's what led me to that first ice bath. And that first ice bath, October of 2017, is part of a small little Wim Hof group here in Phoenix, was just like, boom, this is one of the things right there. And I say, I'm an engineer. I have an engineering degree. I went into business analytics. I'm not a doctor. So it was all very innate. That first ice bath, I got in, I freaked out, I calmed down, I dunked my head, I got out, and I was like, whoa, there is something here. There's something about this. Like the colors are brighter. The birds are chirping more beautifully. I can feel like the breeze on my skin. I can feel the solar radiation. Internally, externally, everything, all of my systems were like, reboot, like I'm back online. And that was kind of really one of the big creation points of all of this. And so when you go into the darkness and you find the medicine, the hero's journey, you come back and you share the medicine, right? And so I'm coming home and I'm telling Adrian, because she knew where I was going. I'm like, yeah, you got to do this ice bath thing. And she's like, you're crazy. Like, you're starving yourself. You're freezing yourself.
Common responses, right?
You're going to kill yourself. I feel like I'm watching my husband kill myself. I was like, no, trust me. But I just started doing it. So I got my own horse trough. I brought it to my backyard. I'm like, babe, Sunday morning, I'm going to do the breath thing that everybody was doing. And we're going to dump a bunch of ice in here. And I'm going to take an ice bath. You can watch me. If I kill myself, I love you. But this is what I'm doing. I'm fasting and I'm taking an ice bath. And she started getting curious, monkey see, monkey do. And she's like, well, Jason's not dead. And it's kind of looking a little fitter. The motions are getting regulated. So, she started, and she was already experimenting with her own anti-inflammation diet, getting into the ketogenic and fasting. And then she takes her first ice bath, and her first ice bath lasted 9 seconds, but it was life-changing for her. Yeah. She got out and she was, for the first time in years, she didn't feel any pain in her joints. She felt empowered to be doing something for her own health. Yeah. And this moment led to other moments. We started doing weekly ice baths at our house in the horse trough. I wanted to be able to do it more often. I don't want to get 200 pounds of ice every day. I don't know who's got time for that. Yeah. My degree's in environmental engineering. So I'm looking at these plastic ice bags, like, this is really bad for the environment. And I wanted to be able to just get up, get in and do it So the next phase of the creation is I wanted to create my own mechanical ice bath. I looked online and there was really nothing out there. There's a couple of chiller boxes available, and there was one company called coldtub.com. Their minimum product was like $25,000, and it was really something that you put in a locker room at like a football, locker room or something like that. Sure. There was nothing out there that anybody's going to put in their backyard to do their home ice bath routine. So I started tearing apart refrigerators. I got a couple of dorm fridges from Home Depot. I'm like, I got an engineering degree. One of the interesting things that I learned through my engineering degree is that cold doesn't exist. There's no such thing as cold. Cold is what we call the absence of thermal energy. So cold is the natural state of matter in our perceivable universe when you remove thermal energy from it. And so I understood that this is how a refrigerator works. Nothing is being put into your food refrigerator to make things cold. What's happening is thermal energy is being removed, and it's just being pulled out and dissipated to the environment. So I understood that this is how refrigerators work. And I was like, will it work in water? Like, where's the part that removes the thermal energy? And so I'm just tearing apart these refrigerators. Adrian thought I was going to blow up the house. And like, that's not how that works. It's not
explosive.
Right, it's not explosive, but I understand, somebody with a crowbar trying to pry apart a machine in the backyard. So I tore apart a couple of refrigerators. I pulled out the cooling element, the evaporator. I pulled them out of the back. I draped them over the side of my horse trough that I put a pine box around. I grabbed a case of spray foam insulation from Home Depot. I filled in all the gaps. I tore the door off of the freezer, put it on top, plugged them in, came back 3 days later, and I had an all-the-time ice bath. I'm like, great. Now I can get out of bed. I don't even have to get dressed or brush my teeth. I can just get up. I can get in the thing. I can get my ice bath, and it's just there all the time. At the same time, we're following hashtags online, hashtag breathwork, hashtag Wim Hof, hashtag ice bath, hashtag cold plunge, hashtag wellness, all this stuff. Getting connected because we weren't like health nuts. We weren't fitness people. We didn't have gym memberships. This is just we were starting to solve our own problems the best way that we knew how. And so we were following these hashtags online, realizing there are a lot of people who are getting into this, and a lot of people who are looking to do it at home. A lot of people who are just dumping bags of ice in their bathtub or their horse trough or their whatever. And so I was like, I made one right here. I don't have to go to the store anymore. We need to share this. And so that was when kind of the idea to start a company, we go to the Arizona Corporation Commission office and sign your name and pick a name and do all of that. And then we built a backyard workshop and started off, iterated the design forward. So it was something that I could ship somehow, figure that out. And wasn't completely embarrassed to sell, figure that out. And so that gets us into 2019, which was our first sale. And it's been kind of an all hands on deck ever since, because we just, by all of the they say luck is the combination of preparation and opportunity. And so by all of that preparation, that solving our own problems that we were doing, we ended up on the tip of like this wave of this explosion of cold plunging and people understanding that there's so much benefit and so much to this therapy. And so, that's about the most condensed art of the creation. And we've only gotten to like the first sale. There's still, from 2019 till now to talk about. So that'll be a good point for me to shut up.
No, but I love it. And I think one of the cool things that made it so amazing for you is, like you said, like, you're not a doctor. You didn't have any type of previous expectations, or you weren't looking for specific outcomes. You were just like, I wonder what the hell is going to happen if I do this. I wonder if this is going to work. Like, it was pure curiosity. And I think that allowed you to be able to fully experience it for what it was, whether it was Adrian taking a couple second plunge or you sitting in there for longer. But it is one of those things that when you get in it and you get out of it, you can't not feel better. Like, you just feel completely changed. It happens very, very quickly. And I mean, we talked about some of the benefits and how it was helping with Adrian. What are some of the other health benefits that you see for your clients and other people who are taking these cold plunges?
A lot, and it's amazing. I've often said it's difficult to find something that it doesn't help with, and I say that I've said that the reason it seems to help with almost everything is the first thing that it helps with is your mindset and your emotional state, your psychological state about whatever it is you're going through. And again, I'll say it a few more times. I'm not a doctor, but I've come to believe, to have faith in the human mind's capability of fixing and correcting and reversing the things that are going on with our physiology. This again goes into all of the industrial and technological distractions that we have around us. And so for me personally, one thing that I noticed is when I get into the ice, like I am snapped into the present moment. I'm not a great meditator. Sit me on a pillow in a yoga studio with essential oils and a diffuser and some pleasant music going on. And my mind's thinking about a million other things. It's thinking about taxes. It's thinking about children. It's thinking about that girl in high school who fucking crushed my heart, that, bully, whatever. It's thinking about everything except that present moment. And for me, getting into the ice is like, I'm in the present moment. And so what we see, and this has been reported from others as well, is that when they're brought into that mindful state, almost kind of forced into that mindful state, because you don't really have a choice in that moment, is all of a sudden your brain, your mind, your soul, your heart, whatever it is that you want to personify in your body, in your existence, is now able to think about and be like, wait, what's going on over here? I'm thinking about like my taxes, my job, my raise, my finances, my house, my kids, my hold on now. What the fuck is going on with my thyroid? Why is the thyroid running around like a rat, like a disruly dog that's just tearing up my house?
Yeah.
And so the mind was so focused on everything else that it was focused on that it wasn't checking in on the thyroid. Or we see it with like injuries, old injuries. People will say, I got in there and I remembered when I was 16 and I fell off a horse, and all of a sudden my knee, where I twisted it back then, I could feel that in a way. And now 2 days later, it's like they didn't know they had the thorn in their side until they got into that mindful state. I'm like, holy shit, there's a thorn in my side. There's a thyroid out of whack. There's a nervous system that's going haywire. And so the mind in that moment can understand and recognize where the problem is in our body and be like, I can do something about this. My mind has an ability to regulate more than we've really given it credit for. And so that's my personal journey. Adrian, by the way, reversed all of her autoimmune conditions. She got off all of her medications. She lost 50 pounds. She started feeling empowered about her own health and wellness. She's developed her own coaching methodology to get people who are anxious about the cold practice in and through the cold. I've watched her coach thousands and thousands of people in a way that helps them not only get in the cold and experience whatever that objective cold on body benefit is, but also to become mindful and calm and stoic and meditative in that experience, which again, we believe allows the mind to just check in on the body and see what it hasn't been paying attention to, or what it has the ability, what the mind has the innate subconscious ability to correct, fix, and reverse, now that we have relieved the mind from focusing on all of this unnatural stimuli around us.
Yeah. And the way that you coached me into it as well, and again, we talked about it before we hit the record button. I know Adrian helped to develop, and he brought it up, how she coaches people to get into it. And most patients that I've talked to or worked with, when it comes to like the cold plunges or cold showers, even, like, they'll usually hype themselves up. They'll start yelling, screaming, hitting their chest, like, whoa, let's do it. Like they're about to get into the octagon. They're just like, let's go. Yeah. And when you did it, we're like, no, we're going to sit down. You ran us through this little procedure. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, this makes so much more sense. Cause like the way that you said it is and there's this new, company that I've been working with. They've been coaching me in like diet, nutrition, and exercise, muscle intelligence. But one of the things that they talk about is like that psychological resiliency. So how resilient can you be to get your body back down to homeostasis? So if you have that flatline homeostasis and you're screaming your face off, you're increasing your sympathetic tone, right? And then you get into a tub that scares you even more. So you have such a distance to cover to get back down to a homeostatic normal. So what's that process, or how did that process kind of evolve?
Yeah, and again, this is Adrian's creation myth of her coaching methodology. The first ice bath that she took, again, lasted 9 seconds, and she hovered over it. She put her foot there, her hand there, and she kind of like guillotine dropped her, or like hangman's gallows dropped her, like just dropped down, boom, and jumped out. And her first couple of ice baths were like that. They were that like psych yourself up, high energy, but she was just struggling. She was struggling to stay consistent with the routine. And so what she ended up doing is just finding that like calm, mindful, this is just what I'm going to do. She does that her first couple of ice baths. And like I said, she knew right away that there was a benefit to this, but the talking herself into doing it, and I'm a few years into this. People say, look at us all the time, like, man, you guys must really love the cold. Fuck no. Like, it's never comfortable. And like the tagline, which is probably going to show up in stickers and social media posts right now, is we always dread it, but we never regret it. But we do always dread it. But in those early days, Adrian was understanding the benefits. She could see the benefits, and then was just struggling to do it because it's not comfortable. And so she just started telling herself a different story, and started like, easing herself into it and understanding that was powerful for her. And then, it wasn't like she got out and was like, I'm going to develop a method and I'm going to share this with the world. That's the Hollywood version. Right. The real version is that we took an early prototype. It was still kind of this backyard engineering project, but I could actually move it. We took it to a festival conference up at Arco Santi, and people, because we just wanted to test, like, are people going to get into this thing? Are people going to be into it? And people were like asking for help. They're like, how do I do this? Like, this is scary. And so she started kind of coaching people through it, and just using what worked for her, and kind of realizing like, this works for a lot of other people. And to your experience, Jacque, when you said like you're used to like, gonna do it, we see that a lot. We see that we've had so many people who are or were athletes in high school, college, even like professional teams, who are used to that kind of competitive, high energy mentality, and they're used to like coach yelling at them like, Johnson, get your butt in the ice. And Adrian will guide them through, and she's certified other guides now. And so one of her certified guides will guide, people who have this experience, this past experience through, and they will come out like, that's completely different. Like, I don't feel like my cortisol, I'm using words that they're not using, but like cortisol levels were through the roof when coach was yelling at me, and now I'm just like calm and meditative, and now I can pitch from the mound from a more like calm and meditative state. I'm navigating that space between stimulus and response. I'm not just all stimulus into response. I'm not just kind of, that machine. I've got a mindfulness to things like now, and improves their pitching, and improves their catching, improves their, move left, move right. I'm not a sports guy. We hear that it improves their abilities on the field, because it's like that power of the pause. It's like, it's like being a little bit less reactive to the stimuli around. Yeah. And so we see that a lot. And, past that Arco Santi festival, the next one was Burning Man in 2019. Was really another place where the creation of the method, the Morozko method, the guidance really came to life. And I helped Adrian coach 1,000 people through an ice bath at Burning Man. You're in the middle of the Nevada salt flat desert. And not so hot to us. I joke,
Yeah.
being from somebody from Phoenix who goes to Burning Man. I go to Burning Man for more pleasant weather, because August in
Yeah.
northern Nevada is a little bit calmer than
Yeah.
August
More forgiving.
in
Yeah.
Arizona. But so many other people are coming to this environment, this harsh desert environment, and then you've got an ice bath there. You get real fuck popular.
Yeah.
But that was also a big creation where we realized, Adrian realized, that this is a magic, this is a gift, this
Yeah.
how to do it mindfully. How can you be calm and meditative and in control of your own body's responses in that very high pitched and uncomfortable stimuli of the freezing cold water? And so that's a big part of the company's development and where we are.
I love it, man. Because the cortisol response, I know you're saying words that they don't say, but that's true, right? When you're stressed out, you get the cortisol release that goes and it can put you into that fight or flight. So the calmer you can dictate that, or the faster you can dictate that back down to homeostasis, the more resilient you become. And then from what I find is that you then are more patient with kids, for example, having a 4 and a 2-year-old here. Like, if you're stressing yourself out all day long and work is crushing you, or, traffic was horrible, or, whatever else stresses you out, and then your kid does something like, I don't know, takes a crayon and colors on something, even though it's like a washable crayon, you're like, what the? And you lose your mind. Versus if you have this steady practice where you're doing this on a daily routine or weekly routine, whatever you can, try to fit time into your schedule, you become more patient in those instances. You become more forgiving because you said, like, the power of the pause. You're able to stop. You're able to filter that response and be like, is this really that difficult? Do I need to have a cold plunge type response to this right now? That was so much harder. This is so much easier. Let's just calm the hell down. And you're able to show up better in the world. That's how I see it anyways.
100%. Yeah. And we say that, we see that all the time as well. Once you can meditate for 2 minutes in freezing cold water, traffic gets easier, kids, business, work, whatever, a flat tire on, all of this stuff just becoming, it's navigating that space between stimulus and response. Is that, Viktor Frankl quote that I've never actually found written. I think it might be paraphrased.
Okay.
Read some of his stuff, but I've never found this quote. But it's that
we won't fact check it.
Right. Yeah. The core of it is true. And, I've read stuff that, I don't know that he actually ever wrote in English too. These are all translated, but anyways, but navigating that space between stimulus and response. And when we can navigate that space between stimulus and response, we find that we have the power to choose our response. And in that power comes so much benefit and opportunity. We're humans, we're apes. And when apes scream at other apes, those apes start screaming back. And then everybody's throwing shit and rocks and comes to blows and making pause and be like, you know what? The stakes are not that high. This is not the jungle anymore.
Yeah.
We don't have to respond in this way. And so, it's a very powerful part about this practice, especially, tying some sort of mindfulness and other routine, whether it's ours or, there's a few out there, tying some sort of mindfulness to the practice, it becomes applicable in so many other places of our lives. And again, when we can calm our mind has a lot more ability to check in and to regulate and reverse and fix and correct our physiology. And so we can do that from a mindful place when we're sitting in ice water, and that carries over. If I can not be so high pitched and reactionary to the other stressors in my life, that's still, if we think in the Joe Dispenza way of our brain as a computer that has some sort of limit to its CPU, its processing power, any amount of processing power that I can take back from the kids, the job, the traffic, the Becky in high school who broke my heart. There was no Becky in high school who broke my heart.
Damn it, Becky.
Right. Becky's like my catch-all name for Chad who bullied me. There was no Chad who was in fourth grade. Chad who bullied. But anyways, the more that we can take back from our CPU, that processing power, now we can use it for something else. It's not just going to lay dormant. I mean, our CPU is going to be like, fix the thyroid. Like, hey, our testosterone is tanking. Like, hey, our nervous system is all out of whack. It needs to sit, stay, focus, and so that's just kind of our experience with this. Yeah, it's amazing. And it's elegant because it's not easy to make. Cold, like all the time, cold water, especially at freezing temperatures, is not easy to make. But once you get it there, or once you find it, if you're in the Pacific Northwest or somewhere else where there's always cold water, some hiking trail away, it's just cold water. Water is the most abundant stuff on the face of this planet. And, a lot of it is pretty cold. And if you can find it or make it and get in it, it's just cold water. I don't have to split atoms here. I don't have to create a new molecule that nobody has ever seen before. They're probably never going to hand me the Nobel Prize. All I do is sit in cold water. It's all over the place. Just get the fuck in it.
Yeah. I remember just from that statement itself, I remember going camping with a couple of my buddies back, like my football buddies back in high school, and they just stripped down into their boxers and just plunged into just some like riverish creek with like a slow current going through. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? But I remember back then jumping in it just because, peer pressure, like I want to do it too. But that was like the beat in your chest and you jump from 4 feet, you're like, whoa. You're getting like shit, and it's like, how fast can I get out of this water? Like my body's like, abort, like save yourself, everyone run, get to the fire. Like, it is abundant, it is everywhere, but also the way that you have developed it too, you have a way to also keep the water clean, which is a problem in the ice world as well. So that is a pretty unique system, or whatever that you might call it. More about the engineering side of things. Can you go into that a little bit?
I can. We use a micron filter for particulate, but the disinfection mechanism is ozone. It's ozone gas, and a lot of the companies that have gotten into this after us are also using ozone gas. And some of it, I don't dissect other people's products, but I see that they're also they've got chemical additives and clarifiers and pH balancers and things like that. I don't know why. Our ozone disinfection systems are designed such that, it's really the only disinfectant that you need. Cold water is naturally averse to microbial infections like viruses, bacteria, things like that. They don't like the cold. They love the hot, which is why so many viruses come out of like hot, tropical environments. They love heat and moisture. That's why your hot tubs are so chlorinated to where it like burns the nostril, because when you get those higher temperatures, you got to dump a bunch of chlorine in there. Cold, it's already naturally averse to microbial infection. And then the ozone gas is a very elegant disinfectant in that the disinfection action is only occurring during the time that the gas is in contact with the liquid. So you're injecting the water, you're pulling the water through a filter, and you're injecting it with gas, and you see the bubbles come out the other side. It smells like pennies. It's that heavy oxygen molecule. But once those bubbles pop and release to the environment, they're gone. Like they don't linger into the water. And so the water itself is just clean and pure, and it's just water. It's not chlorinated water. It's not peroxide water. It's not bromine water. It's just water. So yeah, that's a big benefit to having a product. Not only that you can do it all the time. You can just get up, get out of bed, and get in it because it's already there. But then having that some disinfection system to keep it going. Otherwise, you're just gonna see the water start to turn a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see it online where I want to DM somebody, be like, "Hey, I see you're in a chest freezer. Good job. Whatever gets you cold, but water's looking a little green, buddy." And you're definitely not going to want to let your girlfriend go in there because she's got different parts than you do.
Yeah, right. We have outies, they have innies.
Right.
One of the other questions that we had, like when I posted this on Instagram too, we have the cool plunge system that you have created. Is it comparable or even close if somebody's saying, well, I can't do that currently, but I'm going to do a cold shower or a cold bathtub?
Yeah, it depends on how cold. What I see is that 55 degrees is really that's kind of where the benefits start. So as
Okay.
long as you can get to 55 degrees or lower, you're getting some sort of benefit, some sort of
Okay.
metabolic benefit. Now, depending on where you are in the country, again, we're in Phoenix, Arizona, and so our cold showers in the summer, they're not going to be as cold as 55 degrees, you know. They're
Yeah.
going to I've tested cold tap water in Phoenix in the summertime and it's 80,
Yeah.
which isn't cold at all. And so you're going to want to use that whether you get like an IR thermometer, or if you're using a needle thermometer, make sure it's waterproof, because so many of like the digital needle thermometers out there aren't waterproof, and if you get it wet, it's
Yeah.
going to ruin it. If you get a waterproof digital thermometer, or even an old style
Yeah.
has like
Yep.
analog dial on it, you're gonna want to get to 55 degrees somehow.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
you can get store-bought ice. You can go grab some bags of ice, and that'll get you, down to whatever it gets you down to. And we always say that any amount of cold is a good amount of cold, which is true. Other things that I can recommend that are helpful, that are beneficial, is dressing down in the winter. So, if you're in a place in the country, in the world, where in the winter it gets cold, but not down below like 35 or 40, that's going to be uncomfortable for you to go out without a jacket, without gloves, whatever, but it's not going to harm you. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's not going to hurt you. And before I
Yeah.
invented an ice bath, that's where I started. I started jumping in my pool here in the winter time in Phoenix, Arizona, which would get down into the 40s. And I started when I still had my day job. I was still commuting to an office. I would just suck up that drive. I've got 30, 45 minutes, depending on traffic. And I look at the thermometer and it's 45 degrees. I understand that is uncomfortable, but it's not dangerous. I'm not going to get frostbite unless I have some sort of very, very low body fat percentage. I'm not flirting with hypothermia here. Like, my body is going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to be okay. And so I was just like, I'm not putting on a coat. I'm not putting on a sweater. I've got my, long sleeve white collar shirt and my khaki pants with my patent leather shoes because I'm somebody's employee. I'm just driving my car with the windows up, no heater on, and I'm just enduring 45 degrees. And so I've got that, and that gets easier, especially if you're doing things like cold showers or jumping in your pool or whatever. It gets less uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But then I just do that. And then I was like, don't run from the parking garage to the office, just walk. Jason, you're gonna be okay. Like, you're not in danger. You're just not comfortable. And so these are all really great ways to gain some sort of benefit from cold exposure. And I just reminded myself, it's funny because when I was in that office job, we moved from one office to another, and I'm standing in my office, and somebody from the building came by, because I guess some of the other employees were complaining that it was too cold in the office. Like, the air conditioner was set too low. And the guy comes around, he's like, hey, some of your coworkers were saying that it was just it's too cold in here. We need to make some adjustments. And I looked at the guy, I'm like, I'm the wrong guy to ask this question. Do I feel the cold? Yes. Do I have an emotional opinion about it? No. Go ask Becky in HR if she wants you to turn the air conditioning up. But yeah, that's my long story of saying, any amount of cold is a good amount of cold. When it comes to like cold showers, cold baths, you're going to want to make sure that you're 55 degrees or lower. That's when the metabolic benefits start, and just go from there. One of the other things that I love seeing is that this practice is being adopted in business models. So I see it all over the place. The biohacking salon or the wellness salon, the little retail spaces that are throwing in some IR saunas. They've got like a hot tub, some compression therapy, and then some cold plunge. Some of them have my product. Some of them have other products that are out there. So you can get in on these like drop-in rates or these membership models, and it's a great start, especially even if you have the financial and the space resources. If you're like, I don't want this to end up like that treadmill that we bought 80 years ago that is now just got like clothes hanging
Clothes
all
on it.
over it.
Yep.
If you're not ready for that kind of investment, commitment, start with the membership before
Yeah.
you build the home gym. Otherwise, you're just gonna look at a bunch of stuff that you didn't get into.
Right.
It
happens all the time. That's why I'm laughing so hard.
Yeah.
I've heard too, and I might be paraphrasing this as well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're going to know more about this than me. I heard like 11 minutes a week is like the threshold for like minimum exposure for benefit. Is that right?
I've heard these things. It's not something that I've really tested myself.
Okay.
It's just I'm not the guy who's gonna sit there and test the data, and that's that. Like I said, ask human.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What I will say is a more consistent practice makes it easier, and that's true even for me years into it. Because people look at me all the time like, oh wow, so you're in there like every day. I'm like, no, I'm a human, and I'm busy, and I travel. It's like any other routine. Sometimes I'm really on it, sometimes I'm really off it. Sometimes I'm living out of a suitcase for a couple of weeks because I'm going here, I'm going there. I always joke seriously that I want to strike a deal with Marriott so that there's an ice bath in every hotel that I stay in. That'd be a great deal to close. For the moment, there isn't.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, I get knocked off my routine. Sometimes I go weeks without getting in, and sometimes I'm getting in once a day, every day. And I noticed that the more consistent I am with it, the easier it gets because I'm getting in a flow. And then I get knocked off the routine for whatever reason. And it's a few weeks before my last ice bath. It's going to suck getting back in. It's going to suck getting back into that routine. And I've never been like, I know you're into like bodybuilding and things like that. So maybe there's an analogy there. Like if you get knocked off of your lifting routine, like getting back into it might suck a little bit. And so that's the only real thing about exposure time that I have a personal opinion on, is that the more consistent you are with it, you get into a flow and it doesn't suck.
Yeah, and that's so the bodybuilding comparison is like a lactic acid threshold. So if you're working out consistently, you're used to it. You stop working out, the first like week or so that you're getting back, it feels like your muscles are just being torn from the bone.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could definitely attest to the repetitions being easier and easier, and just doing it in the shower, like trying to do the breath from like what you kind of taught me down in Texas. Like it used to take me, 6 to 10 like deep controlled breaths to just calm me down once I hit the exposure. And I would do it at the end of my shower. I'd do my warm shower. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it, crank it down, and I would start my breath. And then boom, that cold water would hit, it would turn. And my goal was to see how many breaths it would take before the water felt like it was warm. And so now it's like within one breath, the water's warm, but I'm also just walking right into as cold of a shower. I got to measure it just to see what it gets down to, because I feel like I'm like, it's probably 20 degrees. It's probably like 75, but it's something. It shocks my system, and through repetition, it gets easier. But so we can kind of wrap this up for everybody. What is one message for people who are either not concerned per se, but nervous to do a cold plunge? Like, what is one word of advice or one phrase of advice that you would give to somebody?
If you only do it once, I highly recommend it. And, it's only 2 minutes, if that. The guidance helps if you can find somebody who can like walk you through it so that you're not just standing there by yourself, questioning all of your life decisions. But we see it a lot. We see it a lot where people, they're like, I'll probably never do that again, but I'm really glad that I did it once, and they feel some sort of benefit or empowered by it. It's only happened one time that I can remember out of thousands and thousands and thousands of people we've introduced to this, where somebody was like, I really regret doing that. And so can't win them all. That's a very small
little sliver there.
A little sliver there. And other than that, what I like to say is that, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different things that we can do that are billed as healthy and healthful. I can go to the grocery store and I can pick up a bottle of canola oil and it's going to say heart healthy on it. Now, I disagree. I can go on the internet and I can go down a rabbit hole of how great and healthy a vegan diet is. I can go down another rabbit hole, how great and healthy a carnivore diet is. You know, there's all this information out there. There's all this glut and these like little veins of rabbit holes and cultures that we can go into. And what I want people to do more than anything else is to use their own outcomes as the litmus test, as the criteria. If a raw vegan diet is leading you to better outcomes, you feel better, you look better, you have mental clarity, then go for it, do it. If that canola oil on the shelf is for some fucking reason leading you to being healthier, then fucking do it. I don't know why it would, but if that's your personal outcomes, use your own personal outcomes, not somebody else's personal outcomes. Don't look at someone who's professing this. Don't look at me and say, well, Jason eats a shit ton of meat and he gets in the ice and he's 44 years old this year and doesn't look like it. But if those aren't your outcomes from doing what I'm doing, don't keep doing it. Find the practices, find the methods, the foods, the products, the practices, the routines that lead you to personal better outcomes, because there's 8 billion of us on this planet and not one of us is, you know, exactly alike. Maybe, you know, genetic identical twins, but you know, we're all different. And that's just kind of the thing, because I do profess and believe in the things that work for me, but that doesn't mean they're going to work for everybody. And I just want everybody to be on that pathway of internal experimentation where they use their own results on whether or not something that they've tried or they've adopted is worth carrying forward, or if it's worth being like, you know what, I tried this, it didn't give me good results that I'm looking for, and so I'm gonna go try something else. And so that's just really the core of my message.
I love it, man. Well, where can people find you, reach you, buy a plunge tub? Where can they find you at?
Yeah, so the company is, you know, Morozko Forge, MorozkoForge.com. You can do an @ with that name on Instagram. Personally, I'm Jason_Morozko on Instagram. People have started thinking that's my last name. My last name is Stauffer. Yeah. And so, reach out. We have, you know, an info email. You can submit questions on the website. You can reach out to us on Instagram. We're very sociable. And if you have any questions, just please don't hesitate to reach out. Above all, we just want to support people in their journey.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out today and going over this. I know so many people have been asking for me personally to do it. I'm like, I'm not the guy. I know it's beneficial for me. I don't know much about it. So I wanted to bring on somebody like yourself who has been steeped in this. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for serving my audience, man. And I'm excited to see your continued growth.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.